Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those who don't identify as either, you are listening to Ratchet and Respectable. My bad about Friday's episode. I spent the whole episode talking about how I'm going to this Beyonce concert and I wanted to do a review, but I'm not going to record when I come back from Beyonce because I'll be exhausted and I don't want to be up in the middle of the night recording. As time would have it, we went out Friday and the day just got away from us. I got back to the house in time to change for Beyonce, left for the show. After the show, it takes forever to get a car to get back. The stadium was about 30 minutes out in decent traffic. It took an hour and change to get there in Beyonce traffic. But I came back, finished editing the last 10 minutes of the episode, and was like, whoo, that wasn't so bad. Closed my laptop, get up the next morning, and I just, I always check to make sure the episode went up. It wasn't there. So I go to email my producer in LA to be like, hey, what happened to the episode? And I see an email from him, literally came through 5 minutes earlier. And he was like, hey, is everything good? Because he was like, you don't usually turn in this late. And I was like, oh shit. Loaded up the email, put all the information in the email with the breaks for the episode, the topics, the headline, ran the episode to clean it, uploaded the episode to the email, and forgot to push send. So my bad. I was exhausted. But speaking of late episodes, today's probably going to be late too. I apologize in advance. I'm still in Paris. Tuesday is usually my edit day. This Tuesday happens to be the second day of the Blacks in Portraiture event in Paris. It's like everybody Black and excellent in academia is at this conference, and I cannot miss it. I went to the first session yesterday. I can't even rattle off all the names. Dr. Joan Morgan at NYU, Mara Bracachio. She was talking about her work as a writer, and particularly she was talking about Girlfriends. And she said, people have been going back and watching the show and they talk about how toxic the characters are. And she was like, yeah, that's intentional. And she was like, I didn't set out to write a positive story. I set out to write a story. And she talked about how very intentional she created characters that were flawed, imperfect, not always likable. But she was like that they were human. And their friendships weren't always the best or the healthiest, but their friendships were something that endured. And she thinks that part of the reason that people want to see either a Girlfriends movie or a final season or some sort of wrap up, because the show ended abruptly, even though people will say, like, we don't like these women and these women are toxic, people want to see, like, what happened to these people. There was something about them that she liked because you still want to see them again, even if it's just to say, fuck you. Also interesting, she talked about the portrayal of women's sexuality on Girlfriends. She talked about how hard she had to fight behind the scenes for the characters to be able to talk about sexual pleasure. Like, it was fine to say that they had sex, but it was problematic behind the scenes to say that they desired sex or they desired certain acts that happen in sex, because women, yes, expected to have sex for sure, but for men's pleasure. The idea that women were having sex because they were horny or having sex because they actually enjoyed it, because they got something out of it, because they too want to bust a nut. She was like, that was constant uphill battles. And she was like, Sex and the City had done it, but that was white women. And she was like, now Black women talking about sex. And then she also talked about, I didn't remember this from Girlfriends. And full disclosure, I don't think I've seen more than maybe 3-4 episodes. She talked about how in the early seasons of Girlfriends, she's like, there was a backlash and amongst Black women. And she said she would go places and Black women would come up to her and was like, why do you have these women talking about sex and desire all the time? Like, stop it. And she was like, but we as women, like, no cameras watching, like, we like to have sex. We do desire to have sex. Like, sex is pleasurable. She was speaking of one woman in particular, but it was an example encompassing lots of the criticism that she had heard. She was saying that Black women were like, people already think that we're promiscuous or whores, and your show just confirms what people already think. She was like, I hear you. I receive what you're saying. I also say back to you, this stereotype about Black women and their sexuality and being whores and hypersexualized. And she was like, it's not something we created, so it's not something we're responsible for dismantling. She said, I don't believe in positive stories. It's something I really struggle with as a writer, because anytime I especially on my social media pages, when I write about things, they do tend to circulate far beyond the reach of my page, even if they don't go officially viral. One of the criticisms that I often get is like, everything that I write isn't positive. And I'm like, I'm not a publicist. Like, I'm literally no one's publicist, not even my own. I don't even have a publicist right now. I call Michelle Huff when I need stuff, but otherwise. But I always tell people, I'm like, it's not my job to be positive. It's not my job to represent Blackness in some particular way. If overall, like, you see how I move and see what I do and see what I write and you think that it's positive, that's amazing. But that's not the goal. The goal is to be human, great, good, bad, and indifferent. I don't want to be a stereotype of positivity. I want to be me. It's a filtered version that I share with the world, but it's still me. Oh, remember I told you about my professor, the one from the University of Maryland that introduced me to Joan's work? Before I even met Joan, before I even got to New York, she introduced me to the books that made me want to become a journalist. I met her, and I say met her because I knew who she was. She didn't know who I was. I went up to her right before she was going to be on a panel. I had to get my nerves together because the first time I tried to approach her, like, I was walking over and then I just got overwhelmed. Like, I started tearing up at just the idea of telling her thank you. And I was like, okay, I can't just like roll up on a woman and cry in her face, because people do that to me sometimes. And I understand the sentiment that comes with it. Something I've said or something I've done has resonated with them in a particular way. But then when they come up on me crying, I be like kind of freaked out. I said that before and people are like, that's so mean. You don't appreciate. And I'm like, I do appreciate. I just, let somebody roll up on you that you don't know and start crying in your face. Like, even if you understand it, like, it's an odd scenario. Like, I'm getting more used to it because oddly enough, it's happening more, even though, like, I'm not in America. I don't know if it's the travel thing or the story about the guy thing, because that really resonated with a lot of people. Unfortunately, there are a lot of women that have similar stories or have felt similar terror. But yeah, like, just walking around Paris the last couple of days, like, it's tons of Black women over here because of Beyonce and also this Black portraiture presentation. But it's like mad Black women. And they've been rolling up on me. And they've been like, girl, I'm glad you okay. I was worried. Don't you ever post nothing like that in 2 parts again. Also, when is the book? I know that was like your story and what happened, but that's some good ass writing. Can we get a book? I don't know when, but yes, that's not the point. The point is, I see Dr. Wilson. When I first saw her, she was out by the coffee and the cookies. I see her again and she's standing in the room and she's right there. And I know that if I wait till after the panel, she's going to be bombarded because everybody in the room who was interested in what she had to say, which her presentation is about Black women who traveled from like 1770 to like 1880. And she made the point and she was like, sometimes Americans think we the only people to ever do anything. And she was like, other Black women travel. It's not just you. She has a very Whoopi Goldberg kind of demeanor. She looks nothing like Whoopi Goldberg, but she has that kind of demeanor, like just sort of like matter of fact. And she has a very interesting voice. Still not the point. Point is, I see her and I go up to her and I give her my like 1-minute elevator speech. And I was like, Dr. Wilson, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Demetria Lucas, and I was a terrapin from 1996 to 2000. And I was like, I was so excited to see that you were on the panel. I was like, I want you to know, I took your African American Studies 100 class in 1996. And I took an additional 3 classes that you taught while you were at Maryland. And in one of those classes, you introduced a book called When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost by Joan Morgan. And that book changed my life. I became a writer because I read that book, and now Joan Morgan is one of my mentors. She got a kind of dry personality, which I knew because like I took 4 of her classes. She was like 1996. Oh, that's amazing. And so I was like, okay, like maybe, the panel's coming. Maybe she's nervous. Maybe she don't want to be bothered. Maybe she's focused on what she has to say. Maybe like, she's been a professor for, by my guesstimation, at least 35 years. Maybe closer to 40. She's had tens of thousands of students. I'm sure people come up to her all the time and say, you were my professor and this is how you impacted my life and blah, blah, blah. So I excuse myself because I don't want to be a bother. And I'm like, well, it was very good to see you. And she said, it's really great to be seen. And I was like, okay, I'm out. Like, I was glad I said something, but I was just like, here I am bothering this woman before the panel. She's trying to focus. Like, I know how these things go. Maybe I should have just waited until after, blah, blah, blah. So I go and I sit in my seat. That's that. So the panel starts. And when we get to her section, she says that she's very happy to be here. She's like, we're talking about these inspirational women. And she says, here we are in Paris. One of my students from when I used to teach at the University of Maryland is here. She was there in 1996 and she took 4 of my classes. And she said I introduced her to Joan Morgan and now Joan Morgan is her mentor. And she just said, huh. And I was like, oh shit. You heard it in my voice, right? And I was like, I said thank you to her because I felt like I owed her a thank you. As a professor, as a teacher, she changed the trajectory of my life by teaching me something, by literally pouring knowledge into my head. And the way that she taught and the ideas that she introduced to me, the facts that she introduced to me about Black people, about Black history, about Black feminism, have literally shaped my worldview. And I was just really excited to, like, I don't know, say thank you to your oracle, to one of your, for really lack of a better word, creators. Oprah always talks about, I don't know if she necessarily calls it the success of her show, but she talks about how all these people used to come on her talk show and they would tell these stories that were deeply personal and sometimes TMI. And they asked her, they were like, well, why would people come on these shows and tell all their business like this? And Oprah said, what every single person wants is to feel seen. You want to know that you matter in the world. My professor doesn't, receive things or react to things in maybe the same way that I do. She felt seen. And it is very, very humbling to say thank you. There's a Maya Angelou quote, and she says, thank you is what you say to God. That's big. It's very humbling to say thank you. And it's very fulfilling for the person you say thank you to be filled by your thank you. It's just a big love fest. Busy schedule? Sakara delivers ready-to-eat plant-rich meals that help you look and feel your best, even during those weeks of back-to-back meetings and happy hours. Sakara brings expertly designed organic nutrition programs and wellness essentials right to your door. Their science-backed, ready-to-eat meals deliver results you can see and feel, from weight management and eased bloat to boosted energy and clearer skin. If your metabolism could use a kickstart, or you're having gut issues or just low energy, Sakara has an answer. And I love that the food is even delicious. Right now, Sakara is offering our listeners 20% off their first order when they go to sakara.com/ratchet or enter code ratchet at checkout. That's Sakara, SAKARA.com/ratchet to get 20% off your first order. Sakara.com/ratchet. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Have you ever calculated how much time in any given week you spend on yourself versus other people? I would bet that the answer is not enough time on you. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need for yourself. We all have to start setting better boundaries. When we spend all of our time giving, it can leave us feeling stretched thin and burned out. Therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. I am a huge advocate for therapy. I think everybody should get some, especially the people who think they don't need it. You, my friends, are the ones who need it the most. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/ratchet today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ratchet. I'm still listening to this T.D. Jakes book. Obviously, I haven't been listening to it like I should because it's only 8 hours and I'm on like week 2 of listening to it and still not finished, still got like 3 hours to go. But in one of the chapters, he talks about, and this is his latest book, the one that's on disruption. In the book, there is I don't know if it's a chapter, I think it's a portion that talks about success. And Bishop Jakes says that success doesn't feel like what you think it would feel like. He said there's an idea people have that once I have money, I will feel successful. And then once I have money, I won't have the same problems. And he clearly states people with money got a whole lot of problems. Money is not a barrier for problematic shit, traumatic shit, bad decisions, just life happening, things of that nature. He talked a lot about like what success feels like. And he was like, and it doesn't feel like what everyone thinks it is. Like everyone thinks that they'll reach this And I'm paraphrasing like this, I don't know, this feeling of nirvana or this consistent feeling of I have arrived and I am successful. And I've been thinking a lot about that. Sitting in this room yesterday, and mind you, I'm not on any of the panels. This is an event that's been going on it's the 10th anniversary of it now. I've never heard about this before. And everyone's like, oh yeah, like I was at the one in Johannesburg, and then there was one in Venice, and then there was this, and then there was that. And I was like, there was what? Because I've never heard. It's a whole thing, and I've been out of the loop. I won't miss it again though. The event is taking place at NYU Paris. So it's essentially a classroom. It's an upgraded version of the hall for my AASP 100 class. And I just have like this, I don't know, this full circle moment of like more than 20 years ago. I was a student at NYU, not in Paris, but now I'm sitting in NYU Paris. And I'm surrounded by many people who I admire who like are now my peers. Sometimes when I read stories about Zora Neale Hurston or Maya Angelou or James Baldwin or magical Black people who went and did magical shit. Like they went and traveled the world and they wrote about their travels, and they've become very iconic because of the way that they wrote about their lives. You know, they went and did things and came back and told people what they saw, right? And I realized, and I thought about this walking to the event yesterday, that so much of it, like when you're actually doing it, seems so mundane. I left my hotel and I walked 20 minutes and I went to NYU Paris. And on the way, like I crossed over the Seine River, and then Notre Dame was on my left. But at this point, I've seen Notre Dame so many times, I didn't even take a picture. But I was like, this is it. Like, this is Maya. This is Zora. This is James Baldwin. This is Josephine Baker. This is the long list of Black people who found their way over to Paris. To read about it is it almost seems too far, too big. And then to live it, it just seems like living. It's not mundane living. I'm aware it's not mundane, but it's just living. And I was like, oh, this is what success feels like. It feels like walking past iconic shit and being like, huh. It feels like sitting in a lecture hall in Paris and the people you're excited about are excited about you. This is what success feels like. It's not money. It's not accolades and awards. And the feeling is fleeting. Because I told you, everyone and their mother is in Paris. I ran into my friend Gia, my baby, Gia Peppers. Gia is all the things. She's been saved in my phone for over 10 years as baby bestie. I love her. But she's also in Paris. She came in for the Beyonce show. And we had, was it cocktails? Was it lunch? Was it brunch? I don't know. And we sat at a cafe and we drank, and then we went for ice cream. And I was like, Gia, can I be honest with you? And I was like, I feel so lazy sometimes. And she was like, you? Everyone keeps telling me, like, you should be writing a show. You should be writing a book. You should be doing this. I was like, I do the podcast and I do the writer's room. But I was like, I feel so lazy because people are like, you should be doing more. And I was like, I'm not in the US and I'm not flying around and hosting the things and doing the sponsor things and writing the articles and writing the books and making the travel guides or selling the merch. And everyone's just like, you should be doing. And Gia's like, are you crazy? Maybe I am. I finally feel like myself again after the incident in Mozambique. It's been over a month. First and foremost, like therapy helps everything, but time also heals a lot of things. If something traumatic happens to you, don't choose one or the other. Don't do anything rash, as crazy as you might feel in the moment. Time takes the edge off certain things, and it can't fix certain things, but therapy is also good. I started feeling like myself before I came back on social media. After I got to London, I was much better. I would still wake up sometimes in the middle of the night. He had this nickname for me. I hate even saying it out loud now. And he said it when I wasn't sure who was at the door. I ran to the door and he said the name. Sometimes I would be asleep and I would hear that name he had for me loud and clear, like he was standing in the room, like he was standing over me. And I would like wake up in a rush. It didn't really happen in South Africa. It started happening when I was in London. But I would wake up in the middle of the night, just like thinking somebody was in the room. And no one was there. Like I live in it's not a compound. It's a former factory. So the locks on the doors for the entrance and to my apartment are crazy, which I'm thankful for because like my insanity needs that. I used to check the door, not so much in London. That was more in South Africa. But before I could go to bed, I would check the door 4 and 5 times to make sure it was locked. One night I checked and it wasn't, and it just completely freaked me out. But I stopped checking all the locks on the doors. And when my mom came, I slept in a hotel with her a couple nights. It wasn't even intentional. I just like fell asleep on the couch. And then the same thing happened the next night. But when I started staying in my place again, I haven't heard his voice since then. I don't think I'm healed, but I think like the more frightening after effects have stopped for now. Hopefully I don't get a trigger and they come back. I share that because every single person that I've run into has in some subtle way been like, you okay, sis? Like we were worried and we prayed. Are you okay? I'm okay. I had a little trepidation after my friends that I was staying with, they left on Sunday to go back to Ghana and to New York. And I was a little worried about it's weird. I left South Africa and I moved to London. But because I live in London, I think of London as home. And then I'm traveling to Paris. But Paris feels like vacation. I didn't have any trepidation about being in London solo, but being in Paris solo, I was like, okay, like you're going to be fine. I had to like really logically speak to myself and be like, okay, so Mozambique, that was a one-off situation. Every other person that you met for the last 10 months has either been kind or completely indifferent, but definitely meant no harm. You're fine. You're fine. You've been bopping about for most of your adult life. You're fine. And I am. And again, there's like tons of black girls here. And half the people here are headed to London. They were like, yeah, so we're going to see Beyonce in Paris. And then we're going to go see her in London. I like Beyonce. I really enjoyed Beyonce. I enjoyed the concert. I don't love her enough to spend that kind of money to see her in Paris and London. Some other folks that were here were like, oh yeah, I've got tickets in the States too. And I was like, really? Maybe I don't belong in the Beehive. And it was a good tour. I talked about it a little bit on social. I shared some clips from the concert. I had a great time. We had really good seats. We weren't on the floor. That was standing room only. I'm not standing an entire concert, not even in flats. So we were in, I want to say like the 101 or 102 section in the second row. I don't know what else to say other than I thought it was great. She performed most of Renaissance. She performed most of my favorite songs. She can't perform everything. We'd be there all night. Like Beyonce has a lot of music, a lot of hits. I've been talking forever about how like I want my visuals. The graphics were amazing. She was amazing. Like she looked amazing. Her outfits were really good. She's still obsessed with those tiny glasses. That's her thing. But lots of glitter, lots of silver. For most of the show, she had on some version of silver or glitter. Half the audience had on silver. Your people showed up in all the silver things. Everybody walking around looking like a disco ball. She didn't dance as much. Before I was going to the show, I saw a lot of people on social media. They saw concert clips that came from earlier shows. I already expected that she wasn't going to be dancing like she'd done in previous tours. She did dance. She didn't dance as much as people, I think, wanted her to, but she sang down the place. She opened with 3 ballads. I think the first one was Dangerously in Love, but she sang. Sometimes I think people forget, like, she could blow. Like, it might not be Aretha or Patty, but, like, she could blow. She could hold her own. She has a beautiful voice. So what she lacked in dancing, I would say she made up for in singing. I've seen a lot of people talk about she's not dancing because she had either had foot surgery or ankle surgery. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. I haven't seen her or Jay-Z or Solange or Mama Tina or publicist Yvette, Chloe Halle, anybody who's in the inner circle, Blue, who would definitively know and be able to speak about a surgery. Well, I've not seen any credible source say that she had a surgery. And I looked. Everything about a surgery is from the gossip sites. The more respectable newspapers that touched it asked with the question mark or said people online are saying. They didn't say, like, we talked to her publicist and she said. Other people speculated. They were like, well, she's like 40 now. So she's not going to be able to dance the same way that she used to when she was 20-something. Actually, I think at 40, 41, if you're in good shape, you could probably still do most of the same things you did at 20-something. I think maybe late 40s, 50 is where it starts to get a little more challenging. But people think 40 is like the end of Earth. Like you turn 40 and like your whole body just falls apart. I mean, if you don't take care of it, yeah. But if you do, no, not really. It might not be as easy to do as it was at 20, but it still can get done. I don't know why she's not dancing. Maybe the woman just don't feel like dancing anymore. She done danced her ass off for the better part of, 25 years? Maybe she want to rest some. Blue came out at the Paris tour. People didn't realize it was Blue at first because Blue had never been out to dance before, to my knowledge. But Blue came out. It took the audience a minute to realize it was Blue. For me, I didn't realize it was Blue. And then there was this dull roar from the audience. The same way that when Beyonce first walked on stage and the audience just went into this roar And you can imagine what that is. If you've ever been to a concert, when the artist first comes out, the audience just goes nuts, right? That's exactly what people did when they realized it was Blue. It's 80,000 people in the arena. Maybe they're saying 70,000 because the seats behind Beyonce weren't filled because it was back of stage. Maybe that's why they're saying 70,000. Let's go with that. Let's say it was 70,000. No problem. 70,000 people in a dull roar, all because you've just stepped on stage. You haven't even done anything yet. All because you're Beyonce's daughter. This is the first time this has happened to Blue. She came on stage. We recognized who she was. We all start screaming. And then we watched Blue do her routine and go down the stage. She did fine. Watching as a concert goer, all we could see was she was hitting all the moves. Like she was in synergy with everyone else. She wasn't sloppy. She wasn't off. She didn't look lost. And also, all we were happy to see was, oh my God, it's baby Blue. Most of the people at the concert, and Beyonce absolutely has young fans. It was mostly grown folks at the concert. I would say most people were 30 and up, which means we all remember when Beyonce came out at the VMAs and unbuttoned her tuxedo jacket to show that she was pregnant with Blue. Now the bump is like tall and is performing on stage with her mother. It was too much. It was just too much for everyone. We lost it, but lost it in like the best of loving ways. Blue did fine. I was shocked when I saw the clips online and people were criticizing her. She's 11. Like, I know her parents are mega superstars. I know her mother is like this amazing dancer. Beyonce's performance on Star Search or her other kiddie performances, Beyonce at 11 doesn't dance or move or perform like Beyonce at even 16 or Beyonce in her 20s, and definitely not Beyonce at 40. Dancing is a skill. Like, there are some people that get it very innate. Like, remember those kids from the Missy videos? Like, they would tear it up and they were younger than Blue. And so why isn't Blue dancing like that? Because Blue's not them. Some people, a very rare amount of people, can be like 5 or 3 and dance their asses off like they're a Michael Jackson, Chris Brown reincarnate. There are people who are like that. God bless them. The vast majority of people, including Beyonce. It's an 11-year-old little girl. Her first time on stage in front of 70,000 people, there's a dull roar. People start chanting her name. She does her whole routine. People are like, well, it wasn't Chris. She looked like she didn't want to be there. Like, they should have trained her more. Like, it was too early to bring her out because she's not ready. She's an 11-year-old girl. You cannot prepare for a crowd of 70,000 people. It's a baptism by fire. She did fine. And again, she's 11. She's 11. It's not like it was a bunch of 10, 11, 12-year-olds who were on Twitter or social media criticizing. I saw grown-ass people that I know in real life, in the flesh, with children no less. I'm like, how would you feel if someone was criticizing your child like that? Doing whole status updates specifically to criticize an 11-year-old girl. The fuck is wrong with y'all? I shouldn't expect more because y'all done criticized this baby her entire life. Before it was the dancing thing, it was she looks like her father. It was about Beyonce wasn't doing her hair right. You won't put no ponytails and bobbles and barrettes and all that. Like, it was the face she made when Beyonce was in Vogue. Like, literally, she was a baby. She was a hip baby. Couldn't even walk yet. And people were criticizing her appearance. Y'all been trashing that little girl her whole life. I hope she turned 18 and go full Solange and curse everybody out one good time. Because y'all deserve it. The way folks be going after that little girl. She can't even get grown. I'm like, she's a child and she's pursuing something that she's interested in. And y'all trying to tear down her self-esteem before she can even get really going. I think folks need to be reminded she's a celebrity kid. She's popped up on her mom's stage and sometimes she does the Adidas ads with B, but Blue is not a celebrity. She's a child of one. Or two. Speaking of people, I'd be like, leave that little girl alone too. She's not a little girl, she's a grown-ass woman. Halle Bailey. She has the #1 film in the world. The Little Mermaid opened over Memorial Day weekend. Deadline says The Little Mermaid splashes to 164 million global bow, but there's something fishy overseas. People have been review momming The Little Mermaid in countries like France, Korea, and Germany. Folks are pissed about Halle Bailey being the Little Mermaid because she's black. People are just out here being whole racist. And despite their racism, the film is #1 in the world. So congratulations to Halle Bailey. I will see the film when I get back to London. I would not like to watch a film in another language with no English subtitles again. So much congratulations to Halle Bailey. I'm so excited for her. She seems like such a sweet young woman. I want all of the best things for her. Diddy and Careesha, I don't understand the arrangement. They look happy. They got this new single together called Act Bad. The song is terrible. I saw the snippet of the video on Diddy's page. He's doing what he's always done. Diddy is known for partying. There's a party at the Plaza in New York. I didn't have tickets, so I was like, I'm not going. Like, I'm too grown to sneak into that shit. And then I knew people that were also grown like me who did sneak into it. I mean, like, they went through the service entrance to get into the party. And they were like, it was worth every minute. It was amazing. I don't know that I've ever been to a Diddy party. I need to adjust that. I only bring this up because in the snippet for the video for Act Bad, I still haven't watched the whole thing. The song is terrible. I don't care how good the visuals are if the song is terrible. There's a picture of Diddy. He appears to be naked standing on a table. There's a blur over his body, so maybe he's naked, maybe he's not. The idea, people are like, you're like over 50. You have either 7 or 8 children. You out here as somebody's whole middle-aged father talking about act bad. Like, grow up. I really question what people think adulthood, especially like over 40, but even over 50, is really like. We mentioned something about this at the beginning of the episode. People really think when you turn 40, you should be in a rocking chair reading your Bible. And I'm like, that's not really how it goes. It's like you finally get some real money. Your kid should be almost grown. In Diddy's case, you know, he has a baby who really could be his grandchild. But if he hadn't had baby love, like the girls are, all 3 of the girls, I think they're 16. Like them kids is on their way out the house. He was almost about to have an empty nest, which is the case for a lot of people who are in their 50s. When you don't have to raise kids on a day-to-day basis, or when they're older kids, folks start to act like about how they did when they was in their 20s and 30s, especially when the kids ain't around. You are who you are. Like, if you like to party, that doesn't really go away. You don't party as much because you have responsibilities. Once you ain't got the same responsibilities, you go back to being who the fuck you were. There are absolutely people who just grow older and start wearing muumuus and suspenders and black socks and slides everywhere. But there are also people who don't. And I think the vast majority of people, especially I would say from Gen X down, they kids out the house, they got their lives back. They about to act like it. They finally got some disposable income because they ain't paying college no more. They about to go on vacation and act fools. I've said for years, the worst people to travel with, the people who are going to do dumb shit and got to be watched all the time, or who going to get really fucked up and misbehave. Parents with young kids in the house, if they got kids under 5, really under 10, and they go on vacation, them mofos going to drink, dance on tables, smoke all the weed, and then have hangovers the next day. They going to be fucked up. People over 50 or anybody who's finished raising their children act crazy. You want to have a nice, calm vacation where everyone acts reasonable and sensible? People 35 to 45 that don't have no kids. Nice vacation. Eat at nice restaurants. Do a lot of cultural events, a lot of museums and things. Have really fancy dinners. Maybe go to a lounge or something. But be in bed sometimes before midnight. People with children or people over 50, Will Packer and Mrs. Packer, y'all don't be seeing them on vacation? Both of them over 50. They act foolish and take videos and post it. Foolish. They spending money like water and acting bad. That's what people over 50 do. People like, I don't know why Diddy's acting like that. You better hope you want to act bad at 50. What you don't want to be is decrepit and unable to get around and be boring and dry as a person. Your spouse be miserable because you ain't got no life in you no more. I told y'all a few months ago, I called my dad. They told me they were going down to Mississippi. I thought they were going to hang out with my cousin, which they did. My cousin has a little estate. He has a pond. They go fishing. And then he has like I don't know if it's a lake house, because I don't know if there's a lake, but it's a house in the middle of the woods on his property, and they go deer hunting. And apparently it's like really decked out. I thought my parents were going to do some fishing, be in the woods with the deer, like a nice calm vacation. I told you I called my daddy. There was a lot of noise in the background. I said, Daddy, where you at? And he said, we outside. Outside? What you doing outside? He said, we outside. I never did get a straight answer. I thought they went to Mississippi. I swear the man told me he went to Mississippi. They were in Miami? What? outside tailgating. I was like, wait, what? Every time I talk to them, they got plans. They going somewhere. They doing something. My mother is, I can't say my mother's age on here. She would feel away. But I mean, she's old enough to be my mom, and I'm 43. But like, my mom was with me in Ghana in December, came to South Africa in February, and just left London last week. She's way over 50, I'll tell you that much. Let folks live. People have the craziest ideas of like, oh, you're 40, so you shouldn't do this. Oh, you're 50, so you shouldn't do this. Oh, you're this age, so you should do this, you should do that. You know what you should do? Be fucking happy. Whatever that looks like. Life is short. That's the episode. We'll be back on Friday. This is going to go in late because I'm about to get dressed and go to this conference. And then I'm headed back to London later today. Hopefully I get a chance to edit this on the train, so it's not too late when it goes up. Thank you for your patience. I'll talk to you on Friday. Bye.